Hello everybody, I'm Don Counts and welcome into Fayetteville Public Utilities Channel 6. Today we've got a very interesting program. We're going to be talking about the pit. And I know many of you have been to the pit, seen the pit, and know all about the pit, but for people who don't know, the pit is the football stadium at the Lincoln County High School. And we have, through Jacob Sorrells, the principal at the high school, he came across some footage that was done some 30 years ago. And this is unseen footage. Most of it is unseen footage. We've got raw footage. We've got the very first game that Lincoln County High School played in the pit, and we're going to be playing some excerpts of that throughout this program. And also, there was this news story put together by Channel 5 out of Nashville, and a very extensive story at that about the pit. And you're going to see that, plus the raw footage of many people that many of you know. Some of these people have passed away, and some of those were 30 years younger, like our guest today, Mr. Dick Farrar. Dick, 30 years ago, you again was 30 years younger. A big challenge came to Fayetteville, Lincoln County, and we were in the process of consolidating the high school, which was a challenge within itself. But after the high school got established and moved on forward, it was time for academics and athletics to meet and move forward with athletics. So tell me about those years and your part of the building of the pit.
Don, in those years when the high schools of the county consolidated, there was a lot of division among the county. The Flintville's and the Boones Hills and the communities around Fayetteville did not want to lose their high school, and I can understand that, and the public understood that at the time. But we did consolidate the high school, but there was no football field initially for the kids to use, and they were using the old Central High School Tiger Stadium to play and also to dress and things of that nature that happens. Cheerleading, bands, and all had to go to Central High School to play the football game. So in 1980, late 1980, the fall, Mr. Ralph Hastings was the school superintendent at the time, and Mr. Bill Carter, who owned the CFW Construction Company, Bill Crabtree and Mr. Billy Joe Evans, who was principal of the high school, got together and saw the need for a field of their own. So the conversations began in late 1980. And in April of 1981, I believe, the school board said, yes, you can build a stadium on the grounds at the high school, but without county funding. So there was the second challenge. And the community got together, the businessmen of the community started talking, and one of the unique things about the pit high school at the time was it was built by committee, and that was an undertaking in itself, but the businessmen came together, the businesses came together, and then I think in May or June, Mr. Carter sent some bulldozers down to the high school and started turning some dirt. Well, nobody believed it was going to happen until they saw the dirt turn. And things began to swell together, come together at that time. And the money started creeping in, and the businesses started offering Hamilton concrete, said we'll furnish the concrete at cost. Other businesses were furnishing material at cost. And so it was just a group effort. Another unique thing about this stadium, it was built in 9 weeks from the time the dirt started turning until, but it was all built on promise and pledges throughout, because nobody knew what the end cost was going to be except estimated. And in the end, estimates came in that if we had to pay for it on a bid basis, it would have been around $600,000 stadium. But it was built for about $325,000. And 5,500 seat stadium, 5,700 seats you could pack in there. And then during the early years, I remember one occasion we were talking about the stadium, and we met at the high school, and Coach Meadows was the head coach at the time. He was sitting in the back of the auditorium and said, you all get me a new stadium and I'll get you a state championship. Well, in 1981, the first game I think was played against Manchester sometime around early November, and the Falcons lost that game, but they did go on to the Boy Smith's Bowl that year. And from that point on, Coach Meadows began to see the community come together with the building of the stadium. Winning football games brought the community together. And there were many games in the 80s, early 80s and the mid 80s that the stadium was full for a home game, 5,500 people. And the our neighbors, Tullahoma, Franklin County, Shelbyville, they would bring crowds in just to see the pit. They wanted to see the pit. They'd heard the story about it. So it got the community excited, and Coach Meadows kept his promise, because in 1982 he won the state championship against Gallatin in overtime at the Vanderbilt Stadium, where there were 37,000 people at that game. And it was momentum for Fayetteville, Lincoln County, in that people began to recognize our community more and more, and it brought some good things to us.
As you mentioned, the community was divided somewhat, but it actually, over the years, has brought the community back together. It
certainly has. The community. It is the community's high school, and the community of Lincoln County uses it well.
There's been a lot of history at the pit just in recent years through Coach Meadows in the early years, and in the most recent years with Coach Thompson's stint at Lincoln County High School. And it's a great place to watch a football game.
It is very exciting. The kids that have come through the athletic program there, both basketball, football, baseball, soccer, it's a building process, and has been over the years.
As we take a look at this footage from 29 and a half years ago, almost 30 years ago, from Channel 5 in Nashville, set this up for us just a little bit. What brought them down here? Did they realize that this community had this challenge and had moved forward with it? Because they talk in the piece here, which you will see, about academics and athletics coming together and that kind of thing.
Lee Riley was a sports reporter for Channel 5 at the time, and in her reporting around the mid-state, she kept hearing about the pit, and the pit wasn't named until a few years later, when Coach Alvin Palmer said to the kids one afternoon after practice, and they were concerned about their opponent, and he said, well, let them come on to the pit. They'll get a good taste of the Falcon. Mm-hmm. So, but it wasn't called the pit early on. And Lee Riley had heard about our stadium and how it was built by the citizens of the community, how it was built with private money. And she yearned for a story, and called and asked if she could have permission to come down and do a story on the Lincoln County High School football stadium. And in July of '82, I think she was here with a filming crew, and interviewed several people, and this video is very unique in itself, in that a lot of people who were part of the process of building the stadium, school board members, construction people, very interesting video.
The way this video was found, the first game that you've been seeing along the way so far was the first game which we got beat with Manchester. And this game, the game footage was on the front of this tape. Well, all the stuff that you're about to see was at the tail end of the video, and it's actually the raw footage that the news people took. And let me say, they spent some time down here. Most news people come in here and an hour later they're gone. They had to spend at least a day here. So anyway, this is what you're going to see. You're going to see the raw footage, which some of it didn't make the main take, but you're going to see it all. And also, at the end of this, we will show you the news clip in which in which aired. The only thing that you won't see is the character generation of who the people were. And that's where Dick comes in, because he's going to introduce the first lady, and she was on the school board.
Right.
And her name is?
Miss Geraldine Templeton. Her family was from the Montalina area. Mr. B.W. Templeton and Miss Geraldine had two sons, Shields and Ed, and Shields and I were classmates and played football together. And so she was always very athletically minded and was a great school board member.
And here is that clip.
Then you have been a lifetime member of this community, and I'm sure the stadium project is something that you are very, very proud of. But as a school board member, I'm sure there were challenges from the community saying, why is this money going, why is this private funding, why all the enthusiasm for a football stadium when perhaps more academic type programs should be used?
Well, you're right, but on the other hand, this is a very sports-minded area, and we find in this particular area there must be sports along with academics. If you have a wide-awake sports program, then you have a wide-awake academic program. And even though we had challenges from the public, the fact that so many people countywide were so anxious to see this facility materialize, we didn't have too much trouble with that.
That was Miss Geraldine Templeton, school board member. That was a very nice piece.
Nice lady she was.
Right. All right, our next person here is
W.D. Red Jones. Red Jones was in the concrete business. He was a concrete finisher here in the county, a good school board member, and also served as city alderman for a number of years. But Red represented the district in which the high school was built.
now he calls him Red, but now that is they have a old boulevard named after him, right?
W.D. Jones Boulevard.
Yeah, W.D. What is it again?
W.D. Jones Boulevard.
That's right. All right. So here is Mr. Jones' piece.
Okay, Lee, go ahead.
All right. Red, you're on the school board.
Yes.
And have been. In fact, you actually represent this district. What was the role of the school board in this stadium project?
Well, the role of the school board in this project, we work along with the MIDIC to the best of our ability to bring this good school into our community. We thought it was best for the community to have a complimentary high school so that all our children could get a better education.
That was William D. Jones. They called him Red.
Red Jones.
Red. And he was an alderman or school board member?
Right, both.
Both.
Right. I'm not sure at the same time, but yes, he served school board and the city of Fayetteville as an alderman.
A community leader for sure. All right, our next one is somebody that we should know. Introduce this man right here from 30 years ago.
Well, this is Mr. Billy Joe Evans. Mr. Billy Joe Evans, I think, was principal at the high school at the time, and he was instrumental in getting the field, the pit started. In fact, he approached several people, and he said everybody was oohing and ahhing about the new high school, and he said, yes, it's great, but you know what would make it better is a high school football field, if we could have our own. And the work began from there. So we have to give Mr. Evans a lot of credit for pushing the project, and others in the community for making it come together.
He was my principal at Lincoln County High School in the 80s, and in the later years he was superintendent of the city school system.
Right, just recently retired.
Right. And this is Mr. Billy Joe Evans.
And I'm sure there's principals around this nation who want to ask this. How did you manage in these economic times when everybody's fighting for every last penny, how did you get a new football stadium?
Well, Lee, I tell you, it's something that we're real proud of, and something I don't know that would happen again, but things just seem to fall in place. We, of course, built the stadium, or the school, 3 years ago. This is our 4th year going into it. We have tremendous facilities. We were short, of course, athletic facilities. We didn't have a field house or outside dressing facilities for football or outside sports. And, of course, we didn't have a stadium for football. We were going back to the old school and playing. And a group of people, I think Mr. Carter primarily, was concerned and volunteered to dig the stadium out. We were going to, make a bowl type structure. And after we did that, the school board granted permission for him to do that, and he graciously donated that to our school and to Lincoln County. after that, we sort of picked up from there, and a lot of people got interested, and we headed up a drive to sell lifetime seats in the stadium, and from that, it bloomed to what we have now. And of course, the field house, of course, was brought about by amount of refrigeration's involvement, and Roy Clark putting on a concert for us, and we raised $53,000 the one night he was here, and this initiated the move to build the field house. So those two things together is the thing that put us over the top to get the facilities that we now have that we're very proud of.
Dick, that was a good piece there from Mr. Billy Joe Evans.
Yes, it was, and to his credit, he visited a lot of the people around the community, about a lot of the business people. For example, Davidson Iron Works at the time donated the goalpost. Fayetteville Public Utilities, Fayetteville Electric System at the time, donated the lighting at cost. And there were just untold community servants that stepped up with some type of donation. The Rotary Club, Civic Clubs, Lions Club, Kiwanis Club pledged over 3 to 4 years, $1,000 a year, things like that. So even though the money came in maybe after we started playing on the field, it was eventually paid for, and I think the last $20,000 came from the athletic department funding and to get it out of the way.
Billy Joe also was with TSSAA. He worked with them for quite a while.
Billy Joe was a member of the Tennessee Secondary School Athletic Association for about 25 years.
He's a legend and a living legend to this day.
Right,
Yeah.
yes.
All right, another living legend that we got here is no doubt a real good one. Introduce the man here.
Coach John Meadows. He came here from Butler High School in Huntsville and hired by Mr. Evans to start the football program at Lincoln County High School. Stayed 10 years and won the state championship, as we said, in 1982, and just a great fellow.
Here is Mr. John Meadows.
Well, I think it's kind of a sense of pride, Lee, that the community got behind this stadium and fund drives and many other effort. A lot of people contributed. A lot of people bought $100 seats. So it's a Lincoln County project. But I think it's just the pride of the people in this area. They have a great school here. They want to have a great athletic program. And I think it is something that the people of Lincoln County can really be proud of.
John Meadows, he's definitely a legend in football, and he thinks and dreams football ever since I've met him. I'm sure he still does.
Yes, he's written a book since his retirement, and I don't know his coaching record for sure, but he won state championships both in Alabama and Tennessee.
Very good. That is Mr. John Meadows. The next guy I would like to introduce, he's a classmate of mine, passed away a few years ago in a tragic automobile accident, but this is Marcus Webb. Marcus Webb was a very good football player. You might remember Marcus playing.
Certainly, yes.
Good football player, and this is some of the footage that didn't make it on tape because, I mean, at this time he would be either, well, I guess he's a junior, and so they introduced a couple of students, and here's one of them.
Let's go back to football 3 years ago, 2 years ago. What was it like playing on the other field?
Well, it was the seats was real, when you couldn't seat too. It was real crowded, and it was rotten, and the field it didn't hold water that well. The light, it wasn't all that, it wasn't bright, real bright, and it was just real crowded, Stadium just sideline, just everybody on the fences, and if you hear the people on the sideline more than you could coach, it's right. It's not that it's right, right behind you.
Marcus Webb was right. The old Barry Lindsay field, the fences and everything was pretty tight.
That was an interesting, football field, and it was a little rough to play on, but when you had a real good game there, and I played on the old Tiger Field, but the people would crowd around the fences, stand on the fences, lean over the fences, and it was fun to play on, fun field to play on.
A lot of history there for sure. Tell everybody who was Barry Lindsay.
Barry Lindsay, Charles Lindsay was the principal at high school, and was looking at some things recently, and he and Lukey Mansfield were the coaches back as far back as 1940 football team. So he was a football coach, and he was a great principal.
All right. Our next one is Billy Jack Netherland. This is a very interesting piece because she asked him a question about the future, and he still plays a big part of it today.
And Billy Jack was on that state championship team, as was Marcus, and Marcus scored the only touchdown in the state championship game in Gallatin in regulation play, and it was about a 62-yard touchdown. And I remember asking him what he was thinking when he got free and open, and he said, I just wanted to be sure nobody was going to get on my heels.
He ran the 40 in like 4.4. He was a very, very fast individual, Marcus Webb for sure.
And a great guy.
Great guy, sure was. This is Billy Jack Netherland here. He would have to be a sophomore, I guess, at this time, and a lot of you may know him, and this is an interesting piece too.
Why do you think the community built this stadium?
I don't know really, but I'm proud they did. Basketballs, they got the new state basketball gymnasium, and it's wonderful, the best in the state really. And I guess the people, they love football down here, and I guess they just want it to be a big thing too.
When you're 30, 40 years of age, do you think, having experienced what this community has done, do you think it'll change you at all? Do you think you might be inspired to maybe do this for your kids or somebody else's kids someday?
Yes, ma'am, I'd love to. I'd love to.
Billy Jack Netherland there, and that's Billy Jack Netherland's son that works at the Bank of Lincoln County. And it's interesting that they ask him about what he'd do 30 to 40 years from now, because he's still heavily involved today, Dick.
Yes, he is. He's a great young fellow.
Yeah. And as we look on into this, here's some of the footage from some of their raw footage that they shot back in the day of Bear Lindsey Field. What we're looking at, Dick?
That's the old Central High School Stadium, Don, that I can't remember when it was built for sure. Back in the early 40s, I would say. But it served the old high school well, and still serves Central 9th Grade Academy well today, which is a old Central High School building.
Now the next person that they interviewed there is Dr. Tom Bullington. Tell everybody who is Tom Bullington.
Dr. Tom Bullington was a veterinarian here that came from Auburn University. I believe he moved here from Athens, Alabama. And he and his family, I believe he raised 5 girls and 1 son here. So he was very active in the community, 50-year Rotarian, a big player in the stadium committee work on the new stadium, helped raise a lot of the funds, and a great community servant, and a great jokester. He could have more fun than anyone with practical jokes.
I remember him in Rotary, and this is Dr. Tom Bullington from the Channel 5 interview 30 years ago.
I believe that there were numerous people, quite a few people, that had talked about a stadium, that there was going to be a need for a stadium for a year or two at least. And they knew, and other people knew, that every high school, especially one of this size, has a stadium. And then I would say about a year ago, first part of July of '81, several people decided to see what they could do and meet together. It was really a community effort and a county-wide effort, but of course a group has to start it. And actually I got in on it. I didn't get in on the very beginning. I was asked to serve after they'd had a couple of meetings or so. And of course, since it was completed for use during the 1981 season of football, it had to proceed with haste, which it did.
That was Dr. Tom Bullington, and his role here was like on the building committee.
Yes, right. He was a team member of the building committee.
And what we're looking at here is some of the footage of the field house. May you explain how this was come about?
I believe the field house was built in July of '81 for a cost of around $87,000, and the funding from that came from a couple of Roy Clark concerts. And Roy was brought here by Amana Refrigeration at the time. Mr. Ken Sokol, I think, was manager of Amana, and Ray Moffitt and Larry Gerst and several of the employees got involved and sold tickets. And I remember in the, I believe it was the new high school gym where Roy performed, the place was sold out. And that first concert, I think, raised $50,000.
Speaking of Amana and Amana Refrigeration, Ken Sokol was the leader there, along with the ones you mentioned, but he was also a leader of the community as well.
Yes, he was, and Ken was a member of our Rotary Club for a number of years, and also was instrumental in bringing the tornado alarms to the community, which the Rotary Club was behind, along with the city of Fayetteville and the county of Lincoln.
Here is Mr. Ken Sokol. He was the CEO, general manager of Amana during those days, 30 years ago, talking about their role in the building of the pit.
It's not any good for Amana in the sense that that field house, the stadium, none of the physical facilities at Lincoln County High School are going to directly benefit this company or its employees. Why did you get involved?
Well, we like to encourage our staff people here at the local scene to become involved in local fundraisers, county fundraisers, community affairs, what have you. And this was an opportunity for us to lead the way, if you will, to show the staff people what can be done with the talent that we have here, the talent that can coordinate this kind of effort. We think that the benefit that is gained in this area, the benefits that go to the young people, will ultimately benefit all of our people that work for us. The bulk of the credit, however, has to go to the Lincoln County people. They're the ones that came up with the dollars to back all these different drives that we have put on so far.
Dick, we were all very proud that we have Amana in this community today, and we're just as glad 30 years ago that they were here, and some great leadership in the past and present today as well.
Yes, Amana was a big player in the community. They brought in, I can't remember the year, but several professional golfers for a fundraiser at the Fayetteville Country Club, Oak Ridge Boys for a fundraiser for the baseball field at the high school, and so you know, just about everywhere you turn, you would see Amana here in this community.
And with Ken Sokol being the CEO, one of the other leaders there who's still in the community today, and both are retired, is Ray Moffitt.
Ray Moffitt retired from Amana, but he is currently a county commissioner here on the Lincoln County Commission, and Ray served, I think he's still serving as supervisor of TSSAA football and basketball officials.
After it was determined that we could get an entertainer of Roy Clark's caliber in here, we set out a price, a ticket that would help sell and raise enough money to meet this project.
Again, Amana played a big part in this drive and making it happen, but also a company that maybe some of the viewers might not know, CFW. What was CFW?
CFW was in 1975, 76, was the 72nd largest construction company in the world.
Wow.
Working all over the United States. And Bill Carter was president and CEO of CFW. He and my father, Dick Farrar, founded CFW in 1949. And the W in CFW was a fellow by the name of Mr. Betty Williams, who owned Williams Lumber Company. So it was started out as Carter Farrar Construction Company. It was in the utility business, and Carter Williams Construction Company, who was in the building residential construction business. And in 1950, those two companies merged into CFW Construction Company. And as I said, mainly in the utility business at a later stage. So CFW was had about 600 employees across the southeast at the time that the stadium was built.
That sounds like a story within itself. This guy's here, what's his name?
This is Stuart Parker. Stuart was an Auburn graduate that came to work for CFW, and his strength was concrete construction. He was a construction engineer out of Auburn, and he played a large role in the building of the stadium because the product was mainly concrete.
As we're continuing to look at some of the raw footage from Channel 5 out of Nashville, here is
Stuart Parker.
CFW took it upon themselves to go ahead with the excavation work to get the stadium off and running. Shortly after this, the stadium committee got involved with the other citizenry around and decided that just the earthwork was not what was needed, that a new stadium complete was needed by the new football year of 1981. So in July of '81, the go-ahead was given for the complete construction of the stadium, and in 9 weeks from the day we started, the first football game was played, and 3 weeks after that, the complete stadium was turned over to the school.
Dick, it was amazing that they completed the project so quickly. How was that possible? 9 weeks, you say?
Yes, they developed a bar chart, Don, to go by, and this portion of the work was to be completed week 1, week 2, week 3, through the 9-week period. And Mr. Carter set a goal to have the Manchester game played on that field, and it was backed up somewhat from that. Those 9 weeks of construction from the day the dirt was turned.
William R. Carter, you're mentioning, played a big part of that, and he was recognized at halftime or before the game, which you'll see there, a very strong community leader and leader for CFW.
Yes, he was, without a doubt.
As we continue on with the interview that Channel 5 did, this guy needs no introduction. This is the man sitting here. This is Mr. Dick Farrar.
Dick, what were some of the ways that the community came up with the money to finance the cost of building that stadium?
Lee, aside from the industrial contributions and private donations, we had season ticket sales or seat sales, and they were lifetime seat sales where an individual bought a $100 seat for a lifetime, provided he bought a season ticket each year. And we sold about 525 seats last year, and we will have additional seats to sell this year.
Dick, you look like your son there.
Thank you.
The seat sales, is that still a continuing tradition?
Yes, sir. You can buy a $100 seat with a season ticket, and each year you get that seat, reserve seat, right on the 50-yard line or about the 50-yard line with the purchase of a season ticket.
Very good. That was a good idea, and I'm sure it raised a whole lot of money for you.
It did, Don. The Lincoln County Gridiron Association was formed in 1982 for the specific purpose of helping retire the stadium debt. And one of the most unique things we did there to assist the stadium committee was setting square yards of the football field. And a square yard was $25, and if you bought a square yard or 10 square yards or whatever, you got a deed to that property. Now, you really didn't own it as such, but you got a deed, and the deed was signed by John Meadows and Mr. Evans as principal of the high school. So that brought in $83,000. Wow. And the idea came at the time from George Bennett, who was a marketing director for the athletic department at Vanderbilt. And I talked with him one day, and he said, "Dick, why don't you have a square yard sale to help with that stadium debt?" And I said, how do you mean? What do you mean? And he explained it to me, and I went up and visited with George and got some direction, and we came back and put a plan together, and within 6 months we raised about I remember the figure being $83,000.
When Lincoln Countyans come together, we can do just about anything.
I would say that if the statistics were available, Lincoln County would rate in the top 5 in the state in charitable contributions. We are a very benevolent community.
Yep. Proud to live here. As we move on here, this is Aubrey Anderson,
who was mayor at the time.
Okay.
Right. And Aubrey really promoted the idea of the stadium and talked about it on the radio, or just every opportunity he got, he would promote it.
Aubrey Anderson is, I guess the National Guard Armory is named for Aubrey Anderson,
Right.
correct? So this is Aubrey Anderson from 30 years ago, and he's still living and around town.
How does it fare in terms of, for lack of a better word, how does it fare in terms of what you have, what kind of school system you have, what kind of recreational things that you have, what kind of services you offer? How do you fare with other southern cities? Are you better off or worse off?
I think that we're much better off because our people want the better things. They want better service. They want more recreational facilities. They want just a little bit better living conditions in our city. And we're fortunately able to provide it with a moderate tax rate.
What do most of the people in this city do for a living?
Well, it's highly diversified. We have extremely technical people who work in Huntsville and in the aerospace industry and in the for the government. We have people who are agriculturally prone. We have people who work in factories. We have business people who operate businesses and people who work within the businesses, clerks, the bank tellers, etc.
As the mayor, Aubrey Anderson, speaks there about the way things were 30 years ago, it's pretty much the same way today, isn't it?
Not a lot of change.
Not a lot of change.
Right.
Very interesting. Let's introduce this next guy. This next guy is someone that I've heard many imitations of. I've actually never met him. Please tell everybody who this is.
That's Coach Lukey Mansfield, Don. Mr. Mansfield was assistant principal when I was in high school. Charlie Lindsay was the principal. And Mr. Mansfield was a longtime high school basketball coach of our basketball team here, as well as an assistant football coach to Mr. Lindsay. And together those two were a pair now. And both of them are institutions, and probably Mr. Mansfield more so, because, and he later became the county executive for the county of Lincoln, Mr. Mansfield.
And evidently that's why he's speaking out in front of the courthouse now, and 30 years ago, because he was evidently the county mayor, county executive at the time. This is
Coach Lukey Mansfield.
Lukey Mansfield.
But why is it such a social institution? The kids, I can understand why they like it. You're right, it's contact. But why do the citizens who don't play the game, why do they support it so vehemently?
There's a lot of pride that people get out of football, and particularly any sport, and namely now football. That's what we're talking about, of the competition that is developed between the county seat towns that you're playing. It's saying we've got the best team. That is one thing you compete with, and from year to year, friendship develops between individuals in different towns in this part of the mid-state, and it's just natural that they take a lot of pride in what they have to offer in a way of winning.
Lukey Mansfield had a way with words, didn't he?
He certainly did, and you could tell from his talk there that he was a coach at one time, because that was a lot of that was coach speak.
That's right, and all the years we've heard people like people mock him. It's funny to actually hear it.
That's a lot of, and he's a father of Jerry Mansfield, who was a long-time 20-year county executive here, and now with the South Central Human Resources.
The next little piece here you're going to see is some pretty good shots of our community 30 years ago.
He rolled around the squares very much today as it was then, I think. There's maybe It's been beautified somewhat since 30 years ago, but very interesting. And as Mayor Anderson said, I think it depicts a diversified community.
The cars were older.
Cars were older. Yep, they were.
See a lot of people on there that is very interesting. As we continue to look here, here's some shots of the pit. We'll just tell us a little bit. This is some of the early shots of before many games at all was played here.
Well, that's before any games were played, Don, because you see the freshly laid sod there. Actually, before it was rolled, a Roy Clark Fieldhouse had been built, and the practice field was over behind behind the pit. So, those scenes there are before any game was played on the field. Scoreboard was furnished, I think, by Coca-Cola.
That's before the press box was painted.
Before the press box was painted.
Now you've got falcons across the front there.
Yep.
The concrete looked pretty and white. The lights, freestanding poles there, that's a pretty tall poles for somebody to climb.
Right, and the lights were basically upgraded 200% from old Lindsay Field at Central Stadium, and you could the lighting was for television cameras.
Oh, well, you're looking at some where people sit today, and it still looks good today.
Right. Originally, it was concrete seats, but later some bleachers have been added over the concrete.
The pit was looking good, and here, I think their call letters are a little different now. WTVF, Nashville, Channel 5, maybe they're the same, I'm not sure, but either way. And 30 years ago, what you just saw was the raw footage, and what you're going to see now is actually the actual story that played at 6 o'clock, and then we will have a piece that plays at 10.
Welcome to Fayetteville, Tennessee, where tradition meets tomorrow.
Fayetteville is a typical southern city for its size, as is the county it resides in, Lincoln. Typical of southern cities is a great love for sports, in particular football.
Well, in our community, everyone knows everyone, and we can relate with those young fellows out there on the field playing, and then everyone likes to see everybody, you know, about once or twice a week, so the football game's a good place to meet and see each other and visit a bit.
The visiting used to take place here at Central Junior High School. This is where Lincoln County Senior High School had to play its games. It could only hold 1,500 spectators on these rickety seats. The lights didn't quite do the job as far as the players were concerned, so plans were drawn to build this new stadium. Plans that also called for a $500,000 price tag.
The price tag was brought down because local people and local enterprises pretty well assured interested parties in building it that they would cut the cost considerably and even do it at cost.
Not only did the high school need a football stadium, they also needed a field house to store weights and gear. But building a stadium and its accompanying athletic field house was just a dream for the people of Lincoln County. That is, until the local industries got involved. Companies like Amana, who funded the bill for the field house.
No, I don't think it has anything at all to do with marketing or sales or whatever. We feel quite very strongly that our benefits, if any, from some of these things are no greater or nor less than the benefits that you and I would receive just by doing a good neighborly deed to your neighbor.
After the field house was complete, the school board was fully prepared to handle protests from the academic community. Why wasn't there money being solicited for something like a new fine arts department instead of a stadium?
Well, you're right, but on the other hand, this is a very sports-minded area. And we find in this particular area, there must be sports along with academics. If you have a wide-awake sports program, then you have a wide-awake academic program.
Even though the project began in late June, the stadium was ready by its target date, September 25th. 4,300 seats were available for the Lincoln County Manchester Showdown.
Well, I think it's give us more pride. I think we're going to have a better football team than we've had here in 2 or 3 years this fall, and I think it's different. It's just like a family moving into a new house. You want to take care of it, and you're proud of it, and you want to have more pride, and this, that, and the other.
Unfortunately, the opening game in the new stadium was a 9-6 loss for the Falcons. Perhaps the Miracle Stadium was too much for the players to believe. Why do you think the community built this stadium?
I don't know really, but I'm proud they did. Basketballs, they got the new state basketball gymnasium, and it's wonderful, the best in the state, really. And I guess the people, they love football down here, and I guess they just want it to be a big thing, too.
And it still carries a big debt. The bank loans are being paid off from some enthusiasm by the Falcon Booster Club.
Lee, aside from the industrial contributions and private donations, we had season ticket sales or seat sales, and they were lifetime seat sales where an individual bought a $100 seat for a lifetime, provided he bought a season ticket each year. And we sold about 525 seats last year, and we will have additional seats to sell this year.
Even though those seat sales didn't foot the entire bill, the businesses that are still owed money maintain their positive enthusiasm about the project.
We have collected a great number of funds. We are not in the red. I think the stadium committee that went on the line for the project, it still due some dollars, but it's not very many, and we'll definitely raise those dollars to mend those debts very soon.
After looking at this football project, one has to wonder why. Why is this sport so popular, and why is it so vehemently supported in Lincoln County?
It won't take me but one simple sentence. It's a discipline and character that you get out of it from the leadership of the coaches that you have that's teaching the necessary fundamentals of the game and what it takes to be physically fit to play the game and to play it fair and outwit and outscore and outblock and outrun and out-tackle the opposition.
That Lukey Mansfield had a way with words for sure. That's a good piece he said there.
I can sum it up in one word. That was pretty good.
Yeah, a few more than one word. Right. But anyway, let's go back through that. As we look at the raw footage, all the raw footage that we evidently didn't have all the raw footage because Rossi Williams was in there. What is Rossi Williams' position?
Rossi's role was coordinator for the committee, I would guess you would say, and he was the money collector. If somebody contributed $1,000 or whatever, Rossi kept up with the money and for the committee, and so I would say classify him as committee coordinator.
We mentioned Amana earlier, and of course it's Goodman today. And we are very proud, and Lincoln County is very proud and honored to have them in our community because they employ a lot of people then as they do today. That was a good piece. And talking about sports on television, this was a sports reporter, and her name was Lee Riley. Don't know where she's at today, but back in the day, in early days, sports played a whole lot more part of the newscast than it is today. 25 minutes after the hour, you might get into the sports broadcast today, but back in the day, it took a lot more precedence in the news.
Yes, it did, and today being a little differently, high schools don't get the recognition on the sports programming as it did back in the 80s because, of course, today you have the Titans, who seem to get all the news, but high school football in those days, early days of the high school championship games, playoff games, really got a lot of spread on the TV.
This kind of broadcast 30 years ago is like a Dateline or a story that you'd see on 60 Minutes. A very extensive broadcast. And back in the day, they did a 6 o'clock story, which you just saw. I'm assuming that was 6. It could be 10. But the next one will be the other broadcast that they did at a later newscast, and we will see that one now.
Our community, everyone knows everyone, and we can relate with those young fellows out there on the field playing. And then everyone likes to see everybody, you know, about once or twice a week. So the football game's a good place to meet and see each other and visit a bit.
The visiting at a football game used to take place here. This is the junior high school. The football team from Lincoln County Senior High School had to play its games at this stadium. Even though they had a brand new high school for their classes, that project included no football facility.
The stadium wasn't near big enough to hold everybody. The ground was been there. I believe it's the only field that they ever had. It was just way too old. It was just rigid and couldn't get good footing. The lights were, it was just awful.
So the community decided it needed a stadium last June, and they wanted it built by the upcoming football season, a 3-month deadline. But building a stadium and its accompanying athletic field house was just a dream for the people of Lincoln County. That is, until the local industries got involved. Companies like Amana, who funded the bill for the field house. Amana Refrigeration built this field house by underwriting a concert with Roy Clark. But what did Amana get out of a high school field house?
No, I don't think it has anything at all to do with marketing or sales or whatever. We feel very strongly that our benefits, if any, from some of these things are no greater or no less than the benefits that you and I would receive just by doing a good neighborly deed to your neighbor.
A construction company called CFW led the stadium enthusiasm by donating the excavation work. A stadium committee was formed, and they decided a $500,000 structure would suit their needs. But they had no $500,000 to spend. What they did have was important businesses behind them who were willing to help out.
The price tag was brought down because local people and local enterprises pretty well assured interested parties in building it that they would cut the cost considerably and even do it at cost.
Lee, aside from the industrial contributions and private donations, we had season ticket sales or seat sales, and they were lifetime seat sales where an individual bought a $100 seat for a lifetime, provided he bought a season ticket each year. And we sold about 525 seats last year, and we will have additional seats to sell this year.
The new facility was ready in time for the Lincoln County-Manchester showdown. Unfortunately, Lincoln County lost the game 9-6, but the team did win a new stadium, and that would have a lifetime effect on those who played in it.
Well, I think it's give us more pride. I think we're going to have a better football team than we've had here in 2 or 3 years this fall, and I think it's different. It's just like a family moving into a new house. You want to take care of it, and you're proud of it, and you want to have more pride, and this, that, and the other.
Why do you think the community built this stadium?
I don't know, really, but I'm proud they did. Basketballs, they got the new state basketball gymnasium, and it's wonderful, the best in the state, really. And I guess the people, they love football down here, and I guess they just want it to be a big thing, too.
And what of the people of Lincoln County? They're very proud of their stadium, and well, they should be. But why is this game of football such an inspiration and so vehemently supported?
It won't take me but one simple sentence. It's a discipline and character that you get out of it from the leadership of the coaches that you have that's teaching the necessary fundamentals of the game and what it takes to be physically fit to play the game and to play it fair and outwit and outscore and outblock and outrun and out-tackle the opposition.
There's our one simple sentence again. That's a classic of all classics there for sure.
Yes, it was. And Don, we've been mentioning a lot of names during this period, but I'd be remiss if I didn't let you know the names of all the committee members. And our Falcon Club at the time appointed Fuzzy Harmning, Jack Richardson, Bill Hancock, Jimmy Ellis, Mike Truesdale, and Harold Patrick as part of the stadium committee. And from the community, Bill Carter, Larry Gross, Red Jones, Tom Bullington, Bill Crabtree, Bud Rambo, Lex Carter, and Rossi Williams. And together, they worked well together. They were a good team, and the finished product speaks for itself.
True community leaders, and something that we are definitely proud of having the pit in this community, and it's well known across the state.
Certainly is.
Dick, I know this community loves football. The South loves football. Lots of people. It's an American sport. At one time, a lot of people might not remember, in the early 90s, you spearheaded the possibility of getting an NFL football team into this community. Tell me a little bit about how that got started and some details on that.
Well, Don, admittedly, a lot of people thought it was a joke, but it wasn't intended to be a joke. There were some of us sitting around the coffee table one morning, and the NFL had announced in '92 that they were going to expand the league by 2 teams in '94, which would begin playing in '94. But they would select the teams in '92 or early '93. So we were just interested in what a city had to go through to get an NFL team.
Now let me mention, this was before the Titans for
This
people
was
for the young.
before
This
the
was before the
Titans.
Titans was in Tennessee. So
BT.
Yeah, but BT. So continue on. This was a long time ago, and the NFL was pretty big back in those days.
Paul Tagliabue was the executive director of the NFL at the time, and he had succeeded Pete Rozelle, and Paul Tagliabue at the time was Governor, Lamar Alexander was governor of the state of Tennessee, and they were classmates in college. So, but that wasn't the reason that we applied for, we wrote and asked for an application for an NFL expansion team. We were just curious as to what a city, as I said before, had to go through to get an expansion team. Oakland, St. Louis, Charlotte, Jacksonville, Honolulu, Oregon, a lot of teams applied, and Fayetteville, Tennessee. So later on, a reporter from the Charlotte Observer, Charlotte, North Carolina, who had applied. When the deadline had finished, application for the deadline for the applications, she called the NFL office and said, give me the cities that have applied for the NFL. So they listed Oakland, Charlotte, Jacksonville, and St. Louis and those cities, and then they said, and Fayetteville, Tennessee. So the next morning, the headlines in the Charlotte Observer on the front page, Fayetteville, Tennessee applies for the NFL. And then in the article, a town of 7,500 people was wanting an NFL team. Well, from that point on, I was at my office, I was receiving calls from California, Las Vegas, Jacksonville, and then people from around the country started sending me these articles out of the newspaper at USA Today, St. Louis paper, Dallas, Texas paper. Small town applies for NFL expansion team. Well, the jokes, you could hear the jokes, but at the same time, Fayetteville, Tennessee was getting a lot of positive publicity. And Pepper Rogers had called from Memphis, and Memphis was in the running for an NFL expansion team also at the time. And he said, Dick, would you all withdraw and support Memphis? And I said, no, Coach Rogers, we won't withdraw at this point, but if we do, we will certainly support Memphis because we need a team in Fayetteville, in the state of Tennessee. Well, anyway, the things went along, and we finally dropped out and sent a letter. But in the letter that we sent, we admitted to them that we did want the NFL to begin to look at the markets that were smaller than Atlanta or whatever. But during the process, we found out one very interesting thing. The NFL looks at a 150-mile radius. So St. Louis had 5.6 million people in 150 miles. Fayetteville, Tennessee had 7.5 million within 150 miles. Charlotte, North Carolina had 9.6. So we were a larger market, so to speak, than St. Louis, who ultimately got a team, expansion team. Not an expansion team, they got a team like Tennessee Titans, where the team relocated. Titans, of course, the Houston relocated, Oilers relocated to Nashville, and Los Angeles Rams relocated to St. Louis. So, but Jacksonville and Charlotte got the 2 expansion teams that year. But I think the positive publicity that we received back in '92 as a result of placing that application helped Fayetteville, Tennessee.
As far-fetched as it might have been in 1991, as far-fetched as you might think it is today, the Tennessee Titans have done a lot for the state of Tennessee.
Oh, the economic impact they've had on the state is immeasurable, almost, I would say.
And as we look at the positive media attention that Mr. Farrar and our friends or our community got in 1991, here's a broadcast from British
Broadcasting Company came in to do a story on our expansion efforts.
The winners will be decided next February and play their first games in 1994. In the meantime, there are 10 hopeful cities conducting aggressive marketing campaigns and one outside contender pitching its application at a kinder, gentler pace.
It's Ronnie Millsap, and since I don't have you, it's 12 noon, time now for WYTM Local News.
This is a WYTM News Brief. I'm Andy Tucker. A British television crew are in Fayetteville today as they'll be doing some filming in town as they prepare a sports segment on Fayetteville's effort to land an NFL expansion team.
When the arrival of a British television crew knocks the second day of the Soviet coup off the top of the local news bulletins, you begin to realise you've stepped outside the American mainstream. Fayetteville, Tennessee, population just over 7,000, doesn't get a great deal of international media coverage. The big sporting news here last year was the high school football team winning the state championship. This year, the town decided it was ready to take the next step and bring the NFL to rural America.
Well, we feel like it's a pretty good idea that it takes big dreams to make things happen.
Perhaps at first it was curiosity, but once we received the application and began to look at demographics, feasibility, I think it became more of a reality.
Dick Farrar, local lumber dealer and optimist, is chairman of the Lincoln County Gridiron Association. The fact that you could double the population of Lincoln County and still have room inside the average football stadium doesn't bother him.
In a 150-mile radius, we have approximately a 7 million population. We can't sell the NFL on Fayetteville, Lincoln County's 28,000 population. We've got to sell a market area.
The question on the NFL application form about the number of top American companies with their headquarters in town doesn't faze him either.
I would think that Fayetteville, Lincoln County has as many Fortune 500 companies as Green Bay, Wisconsin.
That's none, by the way. What Fayetteville does have, though, is self-belief. It's already named its team after Tennessee's other big sport.
We've had a few names offered to us, but the name that stands out to me would be the Tennessee Studs.
Unfortunately, Fayetteville's high school stadium doesn't meet NFL standards, but the high school coach believes he would.
Well, I'd already talked to Mr. Farrar and told him he could throw away all the other applications because I just moved straight from high school right to the NFL. I'd fit right in there with Don Shula and the rest of those guys.
Other reaction around town has been mixed. At Honey's restaurant and pool room, they reckon business might pick up a little with a team in town, but no one's banking on it.
Well, it sounds good, but I don't think it'd be very feasible. It'll be hard to pay the bills with the population that we have here.
I'd say it was slightly crazy, but a lot of people would love it.
If it got anywhere to put one, I think it would be the very thing to do. I think Fayetteville needs one. They haven't got one.
Although people here know they're likely to be watching high school football for the foreseeable future, in a way they've already succeeded. The town has achieved international recognition, and if the NFL doesn't come, then maybe another big employer will. In the meantime, there's always that slim chance.
I understand, and I truly will say that the idea of getting a franchise here is remote, but it doesn't hurt to think along those lines that we can do it.
Dick, the future's bright. The pit's been great for us, and it's been a good ride, and got a lot to look forward to in the future for sure.
And we got an NFL team. It just landed about 75 miles north of us.
That's not too bad.
Not too bad.
It could be Memphis. They did actually go to Memphis first, though.
They
didn't
did. Yes, they did.
All right. Is there anything else we need to say before we wrap it up? I want to thank you very much for your time and for sharing all this with our listeners and viewers on Channel 6.
Don, my pleasure and my honor. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anything else?
Not at all.
Thank you very much, Dick. Appreciate it. Thank you all for watching. Hope you enjoyed a look back, and hope you stay with us here on Fayetteville Public Utilities Channel 6. I'm Don Counts, and we'll see you back in here next time.